Why don't we get started with all this fun? So, thank you all for coming. We on the finance end of it are always happy when other people are interested in what we're doing. So, this is a good opportunity. All right. So this was the good news when we were ending the year. Our revenues came in at $995,803, which was more than 5% over 2024. And our expenses also came in lower, which is always a good ratio to have. And our surplus equaled $20,613, which was very good news. I have to tell you, we were very, very worried. And so this was a real joy to see the income come in the way it did at the end of the year, and to cover all of our expenses and then have the $20,000 left over. Okay, in your booklet, you'll have this chart. And it's just another way of illustrating what happened during the course of the year and in years past. So this goes back to 2020, and it is the offerings by month. And you can see that was a record setter. It was amazing and a very big blessing. So this is the income statement. Shows the budget for 2025, the way we thought things were going to turn out last year at this time, and the actual expenses as of December 31st. The offerings were, as I said, greater than we had anticipated, as well as the other income coming in. And those are things like our interest and dividends that we keep invested as well as we can. And facility rental, coffee money, all those things go into that other category. Under expenses, personnel, which is our biggest budget area, did come in $50,000 under budget, which we had been anticipating since the staff reorganization in the spring and into August. So that was reflected there as a big savings to our budget. The other primary budget area is the facilities budget. And we were a little optimistic last year when we set this budget. This was set looking back at 2024, and we had had a really good year, and we thought, oh, maybe this will go forward. And so we kind of erred on the light side on that budget, and so it did come in way over budget because we had some big projects, which we'll look at in a little while. Okay, this is the benevolence sheet. It seems like this is always one that people are very interested in. The top part shows the budgeted benevolences. So these are benevolences that are part of the budget. We pay them regardless of what's going on, surplus or deficit, whatever. Those the $71,760, that's a set amount. The non-budgeted benevolences are the benevolences that you initiate. You or other people can initiate. They collect the accounts based on people wanting to support a particular project. They can send the money through us. Of course, CAC is one of the largest recipients of these monies, and it just flows right through and is sent out to the various organizations listed there. But the CAC programs, I was interested to see how we supported those. And $38,000 in this category and some under the budgeted categories went to the CAC. So we are a very big help to them. The other item on this list that I wanted to draw your attention to is the Good Samaritan Fund. That was used quite extensively this year. Currently, there's only a budget of about $5,000 sitting in that account right now. And we're going to go through that very quickly. So if this is an area that's dear to your heart, I would ask that you try to make that deposit.
And I just wanted to comment that the garage sale provides some of our gas and food cards, but the Good Samaritan Fund is also providing the food and gas cards that we give out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is the statement of financial position, or called the balance sheet, and basically just shows you where our assets were at the end of the year. Obviously, the largest is the endowment. That account at the ELCA is sitting at over $900,000. And then, of course, is offset really what you kind of look to about here to show our totals. This is the building and furniture and all of that kind of thing, which we do not. It was set up at the point that we did the remodeling, and we don't adjust that. There's no reason for us to adjust that since it's only, we're a nonprofit, so we don't have to keep that kind of thing up to date. Okay, sorry, these are a little bit different order. This is the list of restricted funds, and I know it's a little challenge to look at, but it has lots of interesting information on it. This is where we hold the operating reserve and the capital reserve, the endowments listed on these pages, and then all of the miscellaneous accounts that we have. We end up with funds. These are things like the audiovisual fund and the organ fund and music fund and funeral fund. All those they're very specific purposes to those funds, and they are restricted by the donor giving to that particular fund. And so we can use these once in a while if we have an expense that fits the purpose, but a lot of them just remain there for a period of time, and we're working on whittling those down. The very bottom are the pass-through accounts, and these again are accounts that come to us with a specific purpose, and we just pass them on through one nonprofit sending money to another nonprofit. The operating reserve grew this year, started out at $208,000, and you may remember that we were fortunate to receive the employee retention credit. It was the last the money that came in due to 2020. And so that fund was finished off. The government sent us the money. It was netted out at $120,000. We did put that into the operating reserve. And then we reallocated some of it. 12,000 of that went to finish up the AV project, the project 2A. 12,000 of it went there. 55,000 went to the capital reserve fund, and the remainder stayed in the operating reserve, which brought our operating reserve to 261,000. Okay, so I mentioned the endowment is in that restricted fund, and they are making awards. If any of you have heard about those, made awards totaling $38,210 so far in the last 3 years. And they will be, they just awarded, and they will be awarding again in the spring. This is an area where if you have an idea about a project you want to do, maybe it's a book group that you want to buy the books for everybody, or some other kind of purchase that's unique and not necessarily part of the operating budget. This is a place to apply. So ideas, equipment, various things can be requested, and then the endowment committee decides on how they're going to support that based on the outlines of the endowment fund. This is a list of the capital projects that we had last year. A lot of these got charged to operations. Some were charged to the capital reserve. We're still kind of working on how to work out that balance. But capital projects added up to about $46,000. And the current balance in the capital reserve fund is $125,000. But that's an area where the money can go really quickly. We were surprised. But, you know, it's one of those things that we need to keep that capital reserve fund filled, because we have these heating elements on the roof, and they cost a lot of money to maintain, and they're starting to wear out. So, plus, we are taking a big hit this year in insurance, and that's another area where we will have to cover more costs if something happened in an insurance situation. Okay, so then we move on to 2026 operating budget. This is the budget that will be presented at the annual meeting. And it is a 4.8% decrease from 2025. So you can see that in 2025, our budget was the $1,010,000, and we actually came in under budget. And after going through everything, we felt like we could reduce it a little bit more. Budgets are a goal. And so we aren't promising this will happen, but this is what we're going to aim for. And I think it can come out and make everybody feel better and able to reassign some of these funds. So again, personnel. This year will receive a 2.5% cost of living and is reflective of the employee restructuring. And that's that big savings here. The administration budget is a budget area that's usually always under budget. And it's because it's a spot where we budget for a lot of expenses that we don't really know what they're going to be. Lots of fees and purchases and printing. How much printing are we going to do during the course of the year? There's money in there for a couple of computers. We don't have to do that very often, but we want the budget in place. And so that is why that budget is often underspent. Under benevolence, you see that the budget is being increased to $83,000. We had initially increased it from the $71,760 that we had this year. We had increased it to $73,000. But then we added $5,000 each for the Easter offering and the Christmas offering. This has always been pass-through account. And we decided that what we wanted to do was to show the importance of those two collections that we make annually. So we wanted this budget to show as part of our operating budget. In other words, we will draw this and allocate it to the cause that we choose for that year. At least the first $5,000 comes out of the budget. Beyond that, of course, you can always donate to that cause or some other. But that's why we have the $10,000 increase in the annual budget for benevolences. So then we're down to facilities, which now we dropped it a little bit. Our actual came in so high that we thought, oh, we better drop it a little bit. And we're hoping that this is a realistic number to match the things that we know are going to happen. There are some big increases coming this year in insurance and utility costs. But we have this, and last year, quite a few of the expenses ended up in operations as opposed to the capital reserve, and so we may find ourselves using the capital reserve more also. The capital reserve fund has been funded at $21,000 per year for at least 3 or 4 years now, and we thought it was time to increase that a little bit. So we moved that up to the $24,000. And that brings us back to $961,839. This is the budget we'll be recommending at the annual meeting. If you are interested in more information about this, you can study the annual report. My report from this year is in there, the trustee report is in, and we'll give you more insight into how these things were kind of thought through. And I think that's it. So thank you all very much. So if you have any questions, we'll try.
First, I'd just like to say that there's one of the benevolences that does not get recorded, and that is Homes for God's Children. The the crisis housing, that refurnishing that we did this year, because that ended up being a couple $1,000s that people donated to do the refurbishing. So we have a list of about 60 people who throughout the year have donated various materials, and that's not reflected in this. I want to make sure they get recognition, especially Bob Thacker, who actually on his own purchased a lot of furniture and things and drapes that were used to refurbish these units. And the question I have is the insurance, is that based upon replacement costs or the valuation cost? So does it, if something drastic happens, does it replace the whole thing or just what it's valued for?
I believe it's replacement cost. The primary change in the insurance for this year was that, as in many households, the church also is now responsible for the full replacement value of the roof, which is, if you replaced your roof at home, it's a very expensive, and so we would be responsible for the full expense if something happened to the roof and we had to replace it. And so that was the biggest change. And at the same time, they increased our premium by 20%. So that adds to it. And so I don't know, does that answer your question?
I just want to clarify that because it was just a valuation, and if you haven't increased the valuation for a number of years, if we had something drastic happen to the building, we'd be really short. We'd have to make it up, and that's why I was asking that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We would have to make up the difference, obviously, for any. We have I believe it's $5,000 deductible, which we have to pay. But then, like internal expenses, we would have to cover those. But that pretty much stayed the same. It was the roof was the big change.
Increasing the cost.
Sure. Yeah, we want to keep adding to that capital reserve whenever we can.
I've never used one of these. I just want to ask about the youth formation. Can you speak about that a little bit? I see it was not used this year, and it's just down. I assume that's fewer children, but can you talk about that?
The youth formation. Youth formation for this year expended $15,643.
Yeah, it's. Oh, and is that it came, the actual came under what was budgeted for 2020. Oh yes, yeah. So they lowered it accordingly they lowered it accordingly to try and match closer to. Oh. Yeah, why, it's hard to exactly say at this moment why, and from a perspective that number of things could draw from it. I don't know that there's necessarily a programming reason for it as much as it is just a budgetary response. The youth ministry and children's ministry has been able to do financially what it, has wanted to do over the past year, given the resources and the people and the children and the youth that we have. And so this is kind of, I would imagine, our reaction to our actual at the end of the year, just to kind of bring it a little bit closer to that. So if we exceed it, we exceed it in 2026 if it's needed. So, yeah.
It's useful to say, how do you arrive at these budgets? And basically, we get a report from Lighthouse every month, and it shows line by line many expenses that go into these various categories. So, when we're setting the budget, we basically just use that history, go through, see, are we over budgeting, are we under budgeting, and why? And for whatever reason, this year, that budget came in with actual expenses a little on the low side. That could mean a couple of things. It can mean that we just didn't spend as much, we didn't have as big a class or something like that, or the budget was too high before, and so we weren't spending the money. There's a number of items that appear in both the adult and family ministry and youth formation. There's a number of different accounts, and we go through each one of those, and as I say, it's a guideline, and certainly if we see a big need, we can make some adjustments.
I would also just say all ministry areas, this was a hard year. Nobody knew December would come through to that degree. And so usually staff is under a directive at that point to try to be economizing as best we can. So like my budget for worship and arts, I had this dream subscription to get me more worship resources or something. I did not get that subscription because I wanted to save Bethel money and seeing where our things is. Particularly our youth and children's ministry program also are lucky to have designated funds. And so they have another resource that carries over year to year. And so sometimes when we're having a hard budget year, anytime that our directors can expense things to their designated funds, they do so. So I just wanted to speak to the reality of this year and often how we as staff are trying to be responsible stewards and responsive to what we're seeing that the Finance Committee has been reporting to us.
Well, first, thanks. This is a very clear budget, so very well organized. Thank you. Easy to read. My question is on the personnel. You're reducing personnel costs. And I remember there was an office reorganization earlier in the year. Is this reflecting of that? Is that the only reason that the costs are going down, or is there more changes proposed?
The reorganization.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's reorganization. That's the main driver there.
Yeah.
We had budgeted for all of the benefits and came in with that correctly. So no, I think it's just, that was the big change.
This 2026 budget honors the restructure that we did over the summer and also it provides a 2.5% cost of living adjustment for all staff. So it, and I would say thank you again to the congregation for leaning into that restructure. It's exciting to end the year with a surplus, but I'm very aware that $20,000, it seems like so much, and yet it could not cover the staff that we had prior to the restructure. We would have still been in a deficit if we had stayed where we were.
There was another one that was over here.
this may be tangential of budget, but looking at the statistical page of the congregation, the trend line for membership is down post-COVID. We had a brief spike, and now it's reversed again and is decreasing. Are we taking anything into the budget to consider how we reverse that trend using the budgetary resources we have so we can look longer term? Next year may be fine, but if we continue the downward trend, how do we continue to support a budget of this size?
That might be would you say that's more of a question?
I can try, yeah, I'm watching those numbers as well. I was intrigued that our live stream views, and we used the exact same formula, so like it always seems slightly, I'm like, a strange number, and I don't fully trust it, but at least it's not the actual number, but that we use the same formula every year so that we can see that our live stream has grown in the past year. And so I'm intrigued by those pieces and that we're doing worship in different ways. And then I think that worship attendance, even though me as a pastor really would love to see all of you every single week, it's not always reflective of our number of households in the congregation. So if you look at the new members received or the transfers out, we actually are still net, and the funerals, we're having net growth year over year. But it does seem like people might be coming once a month instead of twice a month, or a family that used to be every single week might now be twice a month. So I think there's changes in worship planning staff, or in worship attendance. I absolutely watch those numbers too and hope to make worship compelling so you feel like you missed out if you don't come. But I would notice those trends in maybe your own family or friends at different stages in life. But I'm trying to balance it with the households as well, and and those live stream views.
Is the trend in active giving units up or down over the last 5 years?
So pastors only really started being involved at that level of detail this past year, so I don't have the historical knowledge of that at that level of detail. I don't know if you could speak to that. If we've had an increase of number of households giving. Part of me I would say, hopefully, because we have more households in terms of membership, new members received, fewer funerals and transfers out, yes. At the same time, I think we need to be cautious. Younger households tend to give differently than our elders. And our elders are incredibly generous. But so new members that are in their 30s do not give at the same rate that someone who has passed away might have.
You just received your giving statements, or you should have. Caroline sent those out on Friday, I believe, Thursday or Friday. And she did let me know that the number of giving units was 441.
And I believe that total is up slightly.
Yes.
And I would say that what Andrew and Pastor Ben and I have talked about, though, is sort of being aware of this difference in how younger household units approach giving, is trying to do a lot more education. And that we had our first stewardship month since I've been here this last October. And we're trying to be a little more deliberate, trying to educate and make it normalized talking about money, which can be a little uncomfortable for people, but trying to dispel myths, educate how important it is to support the church and why you support the church.
I was going to say on, I guess I need my glasses. Page 28, just so you all know, because it's never been publicized, but from the endowment last year, we put together a medical sort of first aid supplies. It's in the west alcove coat closet. There's also, Blair put in a privacy curtain there because we used that alcove with a light twice or 3 times last year when there was an emergency and we were waiting for help. But we did not come anywhere near what I asked for. As far as I asked for $1,000 because I was imagining a transport, wheelchair and all sorts of things that are very expensive. So there is $567 left from the endowment, which was put in a medical, it's under parish restricted funds. And what that could be used for is when our AED is outdated. It did not need a battery last year, so we did not replace it, but that's like $500. So I want you all to know about it in case I fall in the snow and can never report this to anybody. It's all your responsibility now. And then the other thing I was going to make a comment about was maybe something that we're using funds for, like Torch. We do that 3 times a year. I mean, maybe that can be an endowment request. Somebody other than me can put in an endowment request for something like that, because that's something we could have as a separate, passionate fund that continues to feed our community. But right now, we don't really have a mechanism other than just word of mouth, $20 here and $20 there. And some of us have put in significant amounts to try to meet that 3 times a year. So those are just some ideas of what we can use the endowment for, which seems plush.
Yep. Oh, I'll get to you in a second here, Todd.
Regarding our surplus of 20,000, it was my understanding that the Christmas offering was used for the budget this past year. There have been questions as to whether we're going to use that surplus and put back into the Christmas offering. Is that something that can be done for benevolences?
I'm sorry, use the surplus?
From the income that we have left over from last year. The Christmas offering went to the budget, is that correct?
For the
To cover the expenses.
For the well, let me just go with this. We did end up with a surplus, $20,000, and our automatic rollover for the year puts any surplus or deficit into the operating reserve. If we want to make any changes with that, then that information needs to be gathered and needs to be discussed at the annual meeting where a vote would be taken. There's no votes that go on at this meeting. So I would say it's our money. We can do what we want to do, but we have to agree on it. And so at this point, that 20,000 is sitting in the operating reserve.
I'm looking at a line on the budget for script. It's not been here in functioning for a long time. It's $3,000. It's a designated fund amount under the designated funds. It's like the 3rd thing down, script. As I recall, people used to purchase script and then it went to youth funds. Can that $3,000 be activated for some other use? Why is it being held and not used?
sitting in that account because the people who earned it through their script purchases back when we had that program, were holding on to it for another education purpose. And at some point, we'll need to contact them again and see if they'll release those funds to the general budget. We could do that. It makes it difficult. It's an example of those funds on, you get these small balances, leftover balances, and they kind of sit there from year to year. You can't just arbitrarily clean out things, but you can work on getting permission to do so if you can find what the purpose was or who the donor was or whatever. You can, or, you know.
You can't move to change that.
No, we
It
can't.
goes to the
Yeah.
people that, it has to go to the donors that gave the funds.
Yeah, SCRIP is kind of a unique fund. One of the reasons we're not doing too much of it anymore, except with the youth, gets a little complicated on who owns those extra funds. They can't get them back themselves. They have to acknowledge that they have the fund and they can give it back to the church for some use. But you're right. It's not at the annual meeting. We can't make any changes to that, but we'll make a note to see what we can find out this year.
We have a question here.
I want to remind everyone the garage sale will be coming up first Sunday after Mother's Day. But if you look at the statement, you'll see that we donated $11,000 towards this budget last year. And so that is part of our surplus. So everybody, I mean, we love doing that. And we raised a lot of money last year, but let's keep the garage sale in mind that it's a community social event here, and we want to succeed.
I want to go back to the question about the Christmas offering. I was startled to see that it was going to go into the operating budget instead of to a charitable cause, as we have previously done other years. And so I'd like to just say that I'd like to see that go back to charity.
I can speak to that. So just a reminder that the destination and the choice around that Easter and Christmas offering has historically sat with the Mission and Justice Committee, and it again did this year. I don't want you to think that this decision for Christmas 2025 special offering was made by pastors or made by staff. It was made by the Mission and Justice Committee. The Mission and Justice Committee reflected on all of the budgeted and beyond the budget benevolences that they had done up until that point, including the housing project in Ukraine. And then they were informed of where we were sitting at that time in the budget is a significant deficit. And the Mission and Justice Committee decided we need to focus. We've done a lot this year looking outward. We need to focus in. There is no way that the Mission and Justice Committee or anyone, the Finance Committee staff, could have predicted how well we were going to do. The previous best month in the last 6 years was December of 22, and we nearly surpassed that by almost $50,000. There is no way we could have predicted that. And so it was the Mission and Justice Committee's decision. We need to focus in on and celebrate our staff and our building and our program and things of that nature. And then there is a plan for 2026 for budgeted benevolences every Christmas and Easter going forward, a gift that Bethel commits to give to an organization or a destination, Easter and Christmas. It functioning differently in terms of like no longer a pass-through, but a committed dollar amount that we would give to some organization or something that the Mission Justice Committee would discern as we approach every Easter and every Christmas. So, yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Before Barb closes off the meeting, I'm Lee Runsheimer, been on the Finance Committee forever, and I'm sure I speak for all members of the Finance Committee that we really owe a great round of thanks, applause for Barb, because she's invested. We don't know, but we suspected she's probably invested a few hundred hours of unseen effort in keeping track of actual and working on the budget and so on. So we recognize that. And, you know, the other unseen, unrecognized person perhaps is sitting over here, Mari Aylen, who's been the stem winder of this, the endowment committee that now the endowment fund is $933,000. So let's give Mari a round of applause as well.